Today, we're talking about Fyodor Dostoevsky, the Russian writer and philosopher of the 19th century. He is considered one of the most prominent and influential writers in world literature. His famous novels include Crime and Punishment, The Brothers Karamazov, The Idiot, Notes from Underground, and Demons. Dostoevsky's works are rich with psychological and philosophical layers, exploring themes such as the meaning of life, moral conscience, judgment, suffering, and the distinction between rationality and emotion. He struggled with poverty and injustice, characteristic of the Tsarist era in Russia. In 1849, Dostoevsky was arrested with a group of intellectuals for political activities and sentenced to death. During a mock execution in St. Petersburg, he was tied to the gallows but spared at the last moment due to a decree from the Tsar. Following this event, he was exiled to a labor camp in Siberia for several years before serving compulsory military service. Despite these hardships, he remained optimistic about life and sought to show that even in the darkest times, one can find meaning and hope. In every fictional world he created, Dostoevsky provided paths for his characters to escape suffering. Through moral virtue, love, empathy, and finding meaning in life's challenges. His legacy has significantly influenced existentialism and inspired philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche and Jean-Paul Sartre. In this video, we will explain several philosophical teachings derived from Dostoevsky's novels.
Welcome to a new video from the Polaris North Star channel. Your support greatly helps increase our visibility. Sincerely thank you for your support. Lesson 1. Pride leads to isolation. The first lesson is that pride leads to isolation. Dostoevsky states, narcissism is not a sign of dignity. In Crime and Punishment, the main character Raskolnikov is a law student who believes his intelligence makes him superior to others. This arrogance prevents him from forming meaningful relationships and even inhibits his ability to love or express emotions. Raskolnikov thinks that because he is smarter than others, he is entitled to transcend moral norms. This delusion drives him to murder an old usurer whom he sees as a societal parasite, rationalizing that killing her is justified. However, Dostoevsky reveals Raskolnikov's grave mistake as he shows how his pride blocks feelings of compassion and empathy. Throughout the story, Raskolnikov transforms. He moves from guilt toward compassion for others. Ultimately, through love as a moral compass, he aligns himself in the right direction. Intelligent individuals face two paths. They can isolate themselves through pride or embrace humility and empathy toward others. Dostoevsky believes that an intellectual who isolates themselves from society is condemned to suffering, while one who engages with others creates opportunities for love and compassion. One teaching from Crime and Punishment is that knowledge alone does not determine a person's worth. Qualities like kindness and compassion play a significant role in giving life meaning.
Lesson 2. Focus on your true self. Dostoevsky believes individuals should focus on their true selves rather than how others perceive them. Raskolnikov strives for superiority because greatness garners admiration. However, Dostoevsky critiques this perspective. He argues that personal growth should aim at discovering one's path in life without worrying about others' opinions. Seeking knowledge should stem from an inner desire rather than a need for external validation or superiority over others. Improving oneself solely for pleasing others means surrendering one's freedom and distancing oneself from authentic living.
Lesson 3. Living is more important than thinking about life. According to Dostoevsky, living is more important than merely contemplating life. He states that the wisest person realizes their own foolishness at least once a month, suggesting that people often spend more time thinking about life instead of living it. While he respects rationality, Dostoevsky warns that excessive rationality can deprive individuals of enjoying life's simple pleasures. Prince Meshkin, the main character in The Idiot, embodies this philosophy. Despite his wisdom, he experiences life with honesty and simplicity, which leads others to mistakenly view him as foolishly. Dostoevsky contrasts Mishkin's perspective with that of the aristocracy during Tsarist Russia. Individuals preoccupied with political games often lose touch with real life. At the end of Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov learns that embracing tangible blessings is more important than dwelling on abstract ideas.
Lesson 4. The importance of emotional intelligence. In Dostoevsky's works, both logical intelligence and emotional intelligence are essential. He asserts that intelligent behavior requires more than logical reasoning. Emotional awareness plays a critical role. In Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov experiences a conflict between logic and emotion before committing murder. The act he considers justified appears morally wrong when viewed through an emotional lens, despite his emotions warning him against murder at the last moment. He disregards them due to his prior rationalization. As he faces the consequences of his crime, Raskolnikov realizes he acted against his moral instincts, that what seemed reasonable might ultimately be torturous for his conscience. When logic conflicts with emotion, we must be careful not to make mistakes. Understanding why our emotions oppose our reasoning is crucial. They may be alerting us to errors in our logic.
Lesson 5. Love for life is more important than achieving goals. Dostoevsky believes love for life holds greater importance than merely achieving goals. Living means being among people while maintaining dignity under any circumstances, not losing hope despite social adversities. Dostoevsky's arrest after a mock execution during harsh conditions in Siberian labor camps profoundly impacted his philosophy on life. He argues that accepting unavoidable circumstances can lead us toward peace regardless of our situation, a perspective tested during difficult years spent in Siberia. He states, "Sometimes survival requires focusing not on how life should be, but on accepting what we cannot control, ensuring that love for life does not fade away under any conditions." While existentialist philosophers argue individuals must set goals for their lives, this aligns with Dostoevsky's views rather than contradicting them. It complements his perspective. A person can define their aspirations while remembering that loving life itself is essential.
Lesson 6. The importance of moral conscience. The next lesson emphasizes moral conscience alongside commitment to virtue. Dostoevsky asserts individuals face judgment within their own minds due to past wrongdoings. In Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov's main punishment isn't imprisonment, but psychological torment until confession liberates him. A transformation toward moral virtue brings meaning back into his life, along with peace previously absent. What Dostoevsky conveys is if one deviates from commitment toward virtue, they might evade legal punishment, yet cannot escape psychological torture stemming from guilt. A form of internal judgment without escape routes available. However, even those who transgress ethical boundaries can find pathways back toward virtue at any stage. Even if legally unforgiven, they may still liberate themselves from guilt through sincere repentance, a challenging yet achievable endeavor even for someone like Raskolnikov who committed murder.
Lesson 7. Fighting inherent evil with kindness. Dostoevsky believes one must combat ingrained evil within society using love, kindness, and empathy. He documented experiences during labor camps extensively within Notes from Underground, concluding that evil exists within all humans manifesting differently based on their circumstances during Tsarist Russia. He came to the conclusion that evil is a dormant gene of human nature, and that when man moves away from moral virtue, this dormant gene will awaken. In terms of Dostoevsky, the default state of human is actually the tendency is towards evil. To be a good human means to suppress the desire to harm others, which is why in Dostoevsky's collection of works, kindness and empathy are often regarded as moral virtues, which are the only way out of the evil that lies in the human condition. What can be deduced from Dostoevsky's writings is that to be good is to be a constant battle against the innate tendency toward evil. It is always harder to forgive than to take revenge. It is harder to be patient than to be impatient. It is harder to be compassionate than to be indifferent. Being on the path of moral virtue means constantly reminding ourselves that we as human beings have an obligation to behave ethically, and the more we are aware of the problem of evil in human conditions, the better chance we have of changing and moving towards a moral life.
Conclusion: finding meaning amid suffering. The last thing that can be learned from Dostoevsky is the ability to give meaning to suffering. He says pain and suffering are inevitable for big minds and hearts. Great people have great sorrows in life. It seems that for Dostoevsky, pain and suffering is a constant element that is always with him. Whether in real-life experiences or in the world of his stories, the theme that is present in all his works is that suffering is always a part of the experience of human life. Regardless of whether the protagonist is a philosophy student who has committed murder, or a skeptic of God, or naive-looking sage, or a prisoner in a concentration camp. Through these characters, he invites his readers to give meaning to their suffering. He believes that the experience of suffering in humans evokes an unconscious desire to fight for survival and a desire to become stronger. When Dostoevsky went to the gallows and saw death in front of his eyes, he realized that living is intertwined with the fabric of suffering. If there were no pain and suffering, happiness and peace would also be meaningless. And in a sense, life would be meaningless. Suffering is an inseparable part of human life. For Dostoevsky, the existence of suffering is not only not a reason to give up the experience of life, but the experience of suffering creates a powerful feeling within the human being called hope. The feeling of hope is an echo in the human mind that tells him that one day suffering will turn into happiness and the situation will get better, because the pain and suffering are temporary, just as everything in life is temporary. To think of suffering as futile is to deny a large part of the experience of life, to fail to understand the general meaning of life. If we understand the phenomenon of suffering as an element that transforms into a sense of hope and ultimately makes happiness possible, if we see the phenomenon of suffering as a twist and a turn in the path of life that is followed by happiness, if we have such an understanding of the phenomenon of suffering, then not only will we not be disgusted with it, but we will also see suffering as an important part of life. In his works, Dostoevsky creates meaning for pain and suffering in the minds of his readers. Thank you for being with us until the end of the video. If you like this video, please like it and be sure to subscribe to the channel. And in the end, hello, and the light of God's kindness shine brighter than ever.